can show you the same thing here. If I wrap that round my hand, simulating a spool, we've got a marker on the end there. Now there's say 3 coils of line there. If you hold a marker, you take it off, you can see the coils we've generated. If you untwist that, Chris, so that's 1 turn, 2 turns, 3 turns, we've now got a straight piece of line. So the principle of it, what you have to get your head round, is that you've got thousands of coils that you're throwing out like a great big long spring. They're all containing twists.
Yes.
And once you can get your head round that concept, you're part way to discovering it and the cures for it.
Right, now spring, Rick, tell us a little bit more about that.
Okay, so think of that as a bunch of coils round your fixed spool reel. Now when you cast out, effectively all you do is that. You stretch them out. Now that bit at the end is what's left. Your bail arm's there. That, if it were nylon, would straighten right out. But however much it straightens, you can still see it's actually just a bunch of coils still.
Right, that spring demonstration, great. I don't think there's anybody that couldn't understand that. And I've got to tell you, Rick, I'm getting worried. This all really sounds like bad news.
It does at this stage. But fortunately, there's things you can do to at least minimise the problem. And I think at this stage, we could start with loading the spool, because that helps in the first place. Right, there are only 3 ways you can get line off the spool in the first place. You can revolve it by pulling the line off like that, which is how you load a multiplier reel. You can come off one end of it, or you can come off the other end of it.
Oh dear, Rick, yeah, but which is the right way?
Well, could you hold that a sec?
Sure, no problem.
First of all, we need to know the direction of rotation of the flyer of the reel. And in virtually all reels nowadays, I think the old Mitchells are the only exception, the rotor rotates in a clockwise direction as you look at the front of the reel. So as you wind in, you've got your rotor rotating this way.
Yes.
Now, in order to load line onto that reel correctly, it must unrotate in the same direction as it's going to rotate onto here.
This is anti-clockwise then?
Yes.
So we're going anti-clockwise to clockwise.
Anti-clockwise to clockwise. Visualise the spring. Really, all you're trying to do is get that line, all those coils of line off there onto here. So you're just simply rotating that, and the line is coming off that spool. Now,
starting to make sense now.
It's easier to demonstrate on spools of the same size, because in a perfect world you'd be loading off the bulk spool onto a big pit spool of the same size. Right, okay. Then one twist that's created by this coming off the side, you remember our hose pipe experiment?
Yes.
Is cancelled out because it goes onto the spool in the other direction. So if we have spools, just for the sake of argument, we'll load onto this spool. My hand is the bail arm.
Yep.
I'm rotating, and line's coming off your spool and it's coming onto my spool. We've got 1 or 2 twists in the system here, but nothing much.
Oh, no, this
is the correct way to do it. You end up with straight line on here, coming off there. Straight lines come off, taken a twist, taken a reverse twist as it goes on here, so it's going on here straight.
We should start with then untwisted line, with this method, untwisted line on the main spool.
On the main spool.
Oh, right. Okay.
Now the reason for that we'll show you later on our little machine, because by doing it this way you spool with straight line. When you cast out, the line counter twists, because don't forget, line can twist in both directions.
Yes.
When it twists in the normal direction induced by the clutch, those are bad line twists. But if you can create twists in the other direction, you get more time before your bad line twists bunch up.
Right.
Okay. Now, if we carry on loading this way, as you can say, we're not creating any twists.
Oh.
If you now turn that round so that I'm coming onto a fixed spool reel off a revolving spool reel,
gotcha.
We start to create twists. If you can just let that revolve round, I take a bit of line off here. As you can see, we've created more twists. In fact, we've got a curl in there. Although this way is recommended by a number of anglers and some reel manufacturers, I still can't understand why, because as you can see, we've created not just a few twists, we've actually got a loop in there now. And I don't understand why.
Bad news.
Now, it's even worse if you come off the wrong end of a bulk spool. So if you turn that round, now we'll just load a bit of line to get rid of those nasty coils and start afresh. We should come on that way. So at the moment it's not too bad. Now if I keep winding, that puts a bad twist in, and because you're coming off the wrong end, it's putting the same twist in when I come on this side, because they're actually rotating in opposite directions. I'm coming around this way, that one's going that way. So you can see it doesn't take long before you've got an absolute disaster.
Yeah.
I mean,
just curling up all over the place, yeah.
So the only way to load is off the correct side of a bulk spool, which is what people have been saying for years.
Oh, my head needs a break, Rick. Now, I know you've got this machine that shows all the twisting and what have you, but let's just have a break for a moment. Let's go and see Frank Warwick doing what Frank does best, catching fish. Nice fishing, Frank. Nice carp. Now, come on, Rick. What is this? Is this twisting machine? Let's have a look, see how it works.
Well, that's basically a plumb which we attach to the line when we put some twist in it. It will revolve and untwist. Now, it sits on top of there, and when it revolves over the sensor, you'll see the counter count the twists.
Ah, right.
So there's no guesswork involved. We can find out exactly how many twists or counter twists we've put in the line. So if I show you now the correct way to load the line, and we'll simulate a couple of takes off a carp, the incorrect way and simulate the same amount of takes, we'll count the difference in the line twists and we'll see if one way is better than the other.
Okay.
Right, so now we're going to load the line onto the reel the correct way and simulate some carp action.
Right, so off the spool, Rick, it's coming off anti-clockwise.
That's right, you're coming off anti-clockwise, we're through the butt ring. I've already done a spool loop on there. We'll tighten that down onto the spool, put a bail in. Now, okay, if you don't mind just moving that up to there.
Yep.
I'll put this little gadget on the line. That stops the twist coming out.
Yep.
Cut the line there. Now, over there, we've got a two-handed carp. So we go into bait runner mode. Carp takes line.
There we go.
Okay, he's taken about just over a rod length of line. Okay, now that could be your first run. It's not an awful lot of line to lose. We strike the fish, whack it in, and we gain a bit of line back. So we're putting line back on the reel. Now the carp takes off again.
Off he goes. A lively customer.
A lively customer. So he's had a couple of rod lengths of line off us, that's all.
Yep.
Whoops, we put the bait runner in again. And we've got the carp back. We get him into the margins, and he's a big un. And off he goes again. Okay, So we've simulated loading it correctly, and we've had 3 carp runs over that length of line to induce some twists.
Yes.
Now, if we count the twists, we'll find out whether loading it the correct way gave us slightly less twists than if we loaded it incorrectly, which we'll do next time. Right, we're now about to put the rod up into the ceiling. We want the line just to go dangle straight down and untwist. Now, would you mind holding that? Don't let it untwist, because that contains the amount of twists we want.
There we go.
Up goes the line.
There it goes.
Right, we'll just connect that up to our little machine. 1, 2, 3, 4.
There she goes, look at that.
20.
Now this is on just 3 short runs.
Sorry. Yeah, indeed. Right. 40.
Yeah.
41.
Blimey. That looks like
47.
That's a hell of a lot of twists.
It is, but it'd be a lot worse if we'd loaded the line incorrectly. Let me show you what happens when we do that.
Okay, we've got using a fresh length of line here and loading directly off the front of the spool. Now this is the way I've read in the press, surely.
Sure, I've read the same articles. It doesn't make sense. Let's load it this way and let the machine do the talking.
Okay.
So connect up onto our spool. Put it through the bail on first.
Okay.
Okay. If we can go back there to our mark.
Yep.
I'll put the little clip on. Now if you can hold that clip, Chris, I'll take the spool.
Okay.
Let's cut that off. Now we'll simulate the same 3 carp runs that we did on the last correctly loaded spool.
This is where that fella with that carp with the 2 hands.
This is where the 2-handed carp comes in. So we'll let her off, pass her to the 2-handed carp.
Okay, in she comes.
Okay, we've had our initial take. Put the bait runner in again. Had a second load of line taken.
That's right. Yes, this is the second lively one we've had.
This is another good fish.
And
it's fighting very much like the last one we hooked. That's taking the line out again. So we wind him back in and eventually land.
Okay, I'll hold this.
So if you could hold that,
Yeah, no problem
we'll
at all.
put the rod back up into the roof.
Okay. There it goes.
As you can see, we've got quite a lot of twist to contend with here, Chris.
Wow.
Right, let's put it on the machine and see what results we get this time.
Okay, and last time we know there was 47.
It was 47 twists.
Right.
10, 20, 30, 40,
Oh, past the marker.
50, 60.
Yep. There's more twists.
Yeah, and you've got 62 on the counter. Call that I don't know. 63. You're over 60 twists. So at any rate, we're talking at over 60 twists, which, what in round figures, is 20% extra. I can't see the point of loading line and inducing 20% extra line twists That's where I'm coming from.
And that's just with 3 short runs.
Exactly, yeah. 3 rod lengths.
Amazing.
I mean, you know, imagine the amount of line that you get if you have a real hard fighting fish. To be honest, that's the sort of amount of line you'd let off if you were depth finding.
Yes.
Or in many ways, if you put the rod down, put it on the bait runner to position it in the rests. Whenever you use the clutch, you're inducing line twist.
Because we're lazy, aren't we?
We are lazy, and to be fair, it's a heck of an efficient way of bite indicator. It makes the rig works.
Yes.
You know, I'm not criticising guys who use a marker float that way because they want the sensitivity of being able to pull the line out,
Yes.
run it through the swivel. They don't want to be peeling it off a spool and having it twist up. So you can see, you know, we've got no option but to do it. But as long as we're aware of the twists we're putting in and why, and the importance of loading the line right, we can minimise our problem.
Well, Rick, you've convinced me.
It's all down to my little machine, mate. That's what it must be.
Okay, show us how you fill a spool.
Okay, well, to coin a phrase, here's one I prepared earlier. Okay, we're about to load the line. As we know, the reel rotor turns in a clockwise direction, so the line must come off in an anti-clockwise direction because it's basically facing the spool and transferring itself. Now, you get a lot of spools with little notches in them like that. Sometimes when the line comes off, it can catch in those notches. A useful tip is to put something larger circumference than the spool, like a saucer. We just happen to have a gadget here called a Baggett PVA bag filler, which fits and is colour-coded for these spools. I simply put the spool on the floor so the line can come off it vertically. I get back to the rod and wind that on. Winding line onto the reel through steady pressure through my fingers. You hold it as far away from the spool as you can to give the spool a chance to spin evenly. You've actually got coils of line coming up through the rod, simply because they're coming off the bulk spooling coils, through the rings, but when they go onto the spool, the coil is reversed, so we're actually spooling straight line, which is what we want to be doing. And you might as well wind them up more or less to the top so they're level with the front of the spool. Modern reels with decent line lay will take that degree of overfilling no problem at all. In fact, big pit guys go overfill with no problems. And another way to add a bit of tension if you're finding you're cutting your fingers is just to get a bit of cloth. A bit of damp cloth doesn't hurt. Put that round the line and just simply pinch it with a couple of fingers, and it makes a bit of a graunchy noise, but if you're going to do a lot of big pit fishing and long casting, you want to pack that line tight onto the spool in the first place, so you're going to get bird's nests.
Now we've seen the horrendous amount of twist you can get in a line. Now really, how do you minimise this?
I think 3 ways. First of all, load correctly. As we showed on the little machine, you simply bank less twists. The second thing is the more you use the clutch, the more twists you're going to induce. Now, if you catch a lot of fish, like a couple of the guys here had 32 carp the other night on a session, and their reels were unmanageable in the morning. I mean, they carry spare spools, which is one way to get over it. The spin doctor's another, but they didn't actually want a spin doctor in the swim when they were fishing, so they're inclined to fit new spools. The other way is, as we showed with the reels, the bigger the spool, the less twist per length of line. So a big pit reel, load correctly, and use the clutch as little as you can, but as often as you have to.
Right, okay. But of course there's another way of doing it as well, certainly to help alleviate the problem when it does build up, and that is of course the spin doctor.
Well, at the end of the day, you're going to get line twist. We all use the clutch. It's a convenient way. It makes the rigs work. The only way to get rid of the line twist you've induced is by using a spin doctor. The whole point of that is that you cast the thing out and take the twists out of a great long length of line.
Yes.
And that's the way to get round your problem, and that needs doing on a regular basis if you're catching a lot of fish.
Right, what we'll do, we'll go back to the lake because it's hot in here. Let's hope it's hot out there as well, Rick. We'll go back to the lake, have a look at the spin doctor in action.
Right. Well, here we are back at the lake, Chris, and I'm going to get all the twist out of this line. Now, I've tied on the yellow 40 gram spin doctor,
And it's quite a simple little gadget. All it does is spin in an anti-clockwise direction as you draw it through the water. And that action is all you need to take the twists out of the long length of line you've cast out. The important thing is obviously you have to have the line off the spool, and I'll just show you how it works now. So first of all, I'll just make sure I'm not tip wrapped, and then I'll chuck this out. First cast is going to be a relatively small one because I've got a lot of twist in the line and I don't want to bird's nest the thing first chuck. So it's just a gentle overhead lob. Now wind back in, the line's coming back onto the spool, but all the time the spin doctor's revolving and taking the twist out of the line. A good tip here is get it back to into the margin and get it to plonk straight down, lift it out and see which direction it's twisting. It's still spinning very fast anti-clockwise. So I'm going to go for another cast, chuck out a bit more line this time. Wind in. It really doesn't matter, just wind in at a fairly fast pace. Sometimes you've got to keep the thing up off the bottom anyway, but it doesn't matter. It's more important that you have 2 or 3 chucks and gradually get the twist out of your line than try and do it all in one go. You won't manage it. Now that's come back into the margins again, and as you can see, I've lifted it out. It's still spinning to the left, but not so fast as it was the last time. So it's got most of the twist out on the second cast. Now I'm going to give it a third cast, so back out again. Wind it back in, and with any luck, it won't be anti-clockwise anymore because we'll have got rid of all those twists. Let's see when it gets here. That's a straight line. So there you are, the spin doctor's stopped twisting. If we open the bail arm, we can see the line that was falling off and twisting up before is now perfectly straight. I can feed it just straight off an open bail. You could set an indicator perfectly well on that. You might just as well tie up now and get fishing again. Though quite a few anglers like to give it an extra chuck just for luck. By doing that, you'll bank counter twists in the line. The spin doctor will actually have put some good twists in your line, so you can use the clutch more often before you have to use the spin doctor again. It's a small point. Some anglers, particularly big long-range anglers that are catching a lot of fish, like to have an extra chuck at the end of it.
So spin doctors galore. There's 4 here, Rick. Right?
We've ended up with 4, yeah. We started with these first 2 sizes. That was your kind of normal range one, and this was for the long-range guys. You can chuck that well over 100 yards.
Yes.
Of course, as soon as the big pit boys got hold of the idea, they wanted this massive great thing, so we ended up bringing a big one. Right. And then the matchmen have wanted something that they can use on a rod with a bit of a soft tip where you can't chuck a heavy lead, to get rid of their little mini match line twists.
Like all good ideas, it's so simple, isn't it, Rick?
It is. It's simple and it's foolproof. You've got twist in your line, this spins back to you in the direction that takes the line twist out, and it can't go wrong.
Well, case proven.
Thank you, sir.